just because a space is small doesn't mean the furnishings follow suit. My next guest wants you to think taller, not wider. From that first apartment to a spare bedroom, small spaces require smart, thoughtful design, and a few key design elements will make your smaller spaces feel spacious. By knowing how to scale, you will create impact in any square footage. Designer Melissa Reynolds is here to share her 5 best tips for decorating smaller spaces. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I think this is so helpful and just real life, because often when we look at design magazines, we're seeing these huge vaulted ceilings, walls of windows, big homes, and not everyone lives in that kind of space.
No, that's not realistic for most of us. And especially, like, I feel like the younger generation, a lot of them, they're renting now, and so that's just not realistic to think that we have all this space, but you can still take smaller square footage and make it beautiful and functional and look great.
Well, and I will say, when done well, and you're going to help us do it well today, there's such a warmth and a coziness that comes from a smaller space that's layered right.
Yes.
I have a living room that I don't quite love because of its over, you know, I mean, there's just catches to both
Well, sometimes if you have too much space, it's like, I don't know what to do with it, and it feels vast, and then it feels, you know, empty. So this is good. Smaller, can be cozy and beautiful as well.
Let's double down on that first piece of advice that I mentioned as we said hello. Your first tip is to go tall and skinny with your furnishings.
Right. So adding height is obviously going to draw your eye up, and it's going to kind of trick your brain into thinking that the space is bigger. And we're going to go skinnier because it doesn't take it up as much visual weight.
Yeah.
So more importantly, though, in a space, you want to make sure you have varying heights, because if everything is kind of all the same, then it feels squatty.
Okay.
And then the room can feel smaller.
So we want peaks and valleys.
So we want peaks and valleys, yes. So I just completed this project where I did a model unit of an apartment complex, and it was so small. But I wanted to make sure that it could still be beautiful and functional, and you can still use like normal sized pieces of furniture in there. So I added in the front living room, I added like a tall bookshelf that really helped to kind of break up the smaller things.
The eye.
And it really helps it to feel bigger and airier.
Okay, tall and skinny. I love that. This is helpful as well. You suggest scaling wisely. So talk to us a bit about scale.
So I think we have a tendency to think if it's small, a small room, then we need to use small pieces, but that's not necessarily the case. You know, I think if you have a small bedroom and you put a small rug in there, it's actually going to feel smaller. You want to encompass the space. Don't be afraid to use what you have. So don't be afraid to fill it. So I don't mean by filling it with a ton of clutter, because that will feel smaller, but fill it with furniture that can scale to the room. Like, use a rug that encompasses the majority of the room.
So a rug can go literally corner to corner, or at least fill up a majority of the floor.
Fill up the majority of the space. Don't use something that just floats. You want to make the space its own space. So you want to like layer, like use a rug that is going to fill the space. Use a sofa that's going to fill the majority of the wall, and layer on top of it, and it's going to be scaled proportionately, so it's going to feel better. If things are off and smaller, then the room feels off and disproportionate.
I think we naturally assume that interest comes from stuff, right? Like trinkets or decor pieces, but you say interest in a smaller space can come from like color.
Right. So if you have a smaller room, you can't go overboard on your accessories. You don't have a ton of room for it. So make sure you're being intentional with what you bring into it. Color through your artwork, your accessories, or your textiles, and also make sure you're bringing in texture, because texture is what gives a room dimension and helps it from feeling flat. So make sure you're bringing in wood tones. If you use a big mirror, make sure, you know, that brings in a really great metallic element, but just focus on making sure there's different textures and layers of that, because that's what helps it to feel dimensional.
We often hear how lighting is key. You say specifically in smaller spaces, it's the secondary lighting that needs your attention.
Usually smaller spaces don't have the best overhead lighting, so layer in lighting helps it to feel lighter and brighter, which is going to help it feel bigger. But lighting is one of those wonderful, like, design bonus things, because not only is it functional and necessary, but it's so beautiful, and it adds just another layer of design. So if you have room for a floor lamp or a table lamp or wall sconces, you know, if you have a small bedroom and you can't fit in bedside tables, use some wall sconces on the side of your bed, which will really layer in the light and also bring in such a beautiful design element, and that really helps the space.
Can I ask you another scale question? What about art, Melissa? How does art play into scale in a small room?
So kind of what we were talking about before, just because the room is small doesn't mean you have to do small art. Like, you can use a big piece of art because it creates drama, and also it's not overloading the space with things. So I love adding a big piece of art or also a big mirror. Mirrors are great too because they help to bounce light around and make it feel bigger, but it creates such a beautiful moment and it causes so much drama. Like, one beautiful piece of artwork in a space or two like side by side, it just creates a beautiful moment.
In this case, would you avoid like galleries, photo galleries, or little frames grouped together?
So I think I would avoid, again, it's so important with scale.
Yeah.
So I would probably avoid little things. If you're
Yeah.
going to do a gallery wall, that's fine, but make sure your pieces are a little bigger and we're not doing 10, we're just doing a few. I think that's fine.
Super helpful. And I love seeing you've taken on some smaller projects lately, as you mentioned.
Yes.
And I love seeing your excitement for them.
Oh.
Because it is kind of a crack the code, and when you do it well,
Yeah.
it's so great.
I just think it doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to have brand new, you don't have to have big.
Yeah.
You can still have a beautiful space no matter what.
Where can we see your work and your projects, and how can potential clients get in touch with you?
I'm on brasshouseinteriors.com or on Instagram at Brass House Interiors.
Brass House Interiors. Give her a follow, and we'll link you over from our website.